to the 8th Regional Growth Conference organized by the newspaper Peloponnesos and the Western Greece region. I want to thank for this the Governor Mr. Nektarios Farmakis, and the opportunity who gave me to host this. I'm Fanis Papathanasiou. I'm an anchor and diplomatic correspondent with ERT. ERT is the public television of Greece. So, and today we're going to talk with two good friends in the United States about diaspora and investments in Greece. Mike Carlutzos from New York, now in Virginia today, will join us, and he will talk to us about the U.S. view. Also, Dionysis Dan Michalopoulos, respected journalist in Chicago, working as an investigative reporter at WBZ, is here with us, and he will give us his views about investments, possible investments in Greece. So we will start with you, Mike, and we will start with tourism. As you know, Greece is opening its borders to tourists. You had plans to visit Greece. I have a lot of friends that want to come, but this year it's not going to be an easy question. So tell me, how do you feel about it?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us, and thank you everybody for your patience as we connected. I can tell you from my perspective, from my family's perspective, the Carlutzos kids absolutely want to be in Greece this summer. And they are not happy that they won't be there this summer. I travel to Greece probably about a dozen times a year. So I was last there in March, actually, but right before the shutdown occurred. But it's difficult. And I think we as Greek Americans have to understand the circumstances. Greece is on the descent, and unfortunately, America is on the ascent. There are places here like Texas, California, Florida, that have a serious problem right now. Stuff that we faced 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago in Washington and New York, they're now facing. So if you were the government of Greece, you would take the steps. And by the way, if you were Europe, you would try to curb entry so that way you can contain the pandemic. This is a serious subject.
Okay. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think everybody would love to go to Greece. We have a home there, and we visit it frequently, as do many Greek Americans, obviously. But right now in the United States, the situation is so bad, and this is the rare circumstance. It's been noted many times where Greece has performed much, much more effectively than the United States. Historically, the stereotype is the opposite. But in this case, performed very admirably. Here in Chicago, it's in the state of Illinois, for instance. We have a population that is roughly the same as Greece, and we have had more than 6,000 deaths from COVID-19 in the state of Illinois. And now compare that to Greece. And we are actually...
Well, I think we have to understand the circumstances, right? Just like the pandemic, we have to understand that the climate for investment might be similar to that of tourism. We all want to do it, but there's a sense of caution, right? There's a question in the air, and we need to overcome here in America. We need to overcome the pandemic, the social unrest, the question of an election in November. And I think the market will stabilize. It'll certainly stabilize. And we have to understand that Greece is always attractive. It's a place that we all want to be. It's a place that we all love, especially as Greeks of the diaspora. But I think things need to settle down. There are other questions as well as it relates to investment in Greece. It's not just about COVID. But we'll overcome these things together. And certainly... as it relates to this government, they've obviously been very pro-business. They've opened the doors. You have an incredible U.S. ambassador in Greece representing the interest. So I think there's a positive trend, but we have to overcome the obstacles that are in front of us first.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about how do you evaluate? You talk about the efforts of the government. How do you evaluate the efforts of the Greek government to create this business-friendly environment?
You want me to answer that, or Dan? So look, I in America right now, we're facing an issue of systemic racism, right? This is something that unfortunately was embedded in our country for years. In Greece, there's another challenge, which unfortunately is systemic corruption. And this is something that, regardless of government, it's happened for years upon years. It's something that we don't like talking about as Greeks, but we know that exists. And in order for us to really be serious about welcoming investment to Greece, we have to address that issue of corruption.
Mm-hmm. So far, how do you evaluate and the efforts of the Greek government about fighting corruption?
I'm hopeful that this government will not just be all talk. I'm hopeful that this government will actually effectuate the change that's needed, because only by effectuating change will people actually believe that the tide has turned. We haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet personally, but we're hopeful. The Prime Minister is a leader. And he enjoys, incredible favorability right now. This is the time to make the changes that are necessary to welcome investment into Greece. But it's more about doing rather than talking. Let's see.
Dan, how about you? Have you heard any stories of Greek American or American investors trying to invest in Greece?
Yeah, certainly. But what it starts with for a lot of Greek Americans is their interface, their interaction with the Greek government and its representatives in the United States. And we have a consulate in Chicago, which is in the city center. And unfortunately, some people make a lot of jokes about the quality or the lack of quality, perhaps, of the customer service of the Greek government. The story that I like to tell, it's going back a while now, but I think it's still true. Once my father and I both lost our passports in Spain, in Barcelona. Within 1 to 2 hours, the U.S. consulate in Barcelona gave me, a U.S.-born, U.S. citizen, a new passport and apologized that they didn't do it more quickly. We went to the Greek consulate in Barcelona for several days because my father at the time was only a Greek citizen. And it was very difficult. They actually wanted us to go back to Peloponneso, to Tripoli, to get proof that he had done the military service, which he did with some extra months of service during the Huda in the late 60s, early 70s. So, when you have these kind of experiences from the first step where you need to interface with the Greek government, I think that needs to be improved. I mean, they closed for long periods around Easter, much longer than any American office would close, at least before the pandemic. And also, you have situations where the hours are really short, and you have to hire a lawyer and have additional costs just to deal with the consulate and with the Greek government from the beginning. This discourages people from investment in their homeland, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mike, the project of Eniliniko is a big bet for the government. It seems that soon works will begin. What signal this will send to the markets and to the United States?
Well, this particular subject is kind of personal to me. However, you're such a good reporter.
Reveal your interest.
Look, I'm actually happy as being the non-journalist on this call that I can say I'm not fake news. So I'm happy about that. But look, Ellenikon is the project, and I think we all recognize that. And certainly, that's why I wanted to be part of it. That's why Hard Rock wants to be part of it. And Greece has to get it right. Not just the Mitsotakis government, but Greece has to get it right. And I pray that will be the case. It's important. I know there's a lot of talk about bulldozers and all of these things. I would rather get it right than right now. So I think we have to be patient. We have to see what happens over the course of the next couple of months. Obviously, it's an incredible symbolic moment to open Ellenikon, but I think under the present circumstances in a post-COVID-19 world, it's important that it's done properly, and we're not rushing to get it done just for the sake of making a press conference and cutting red tape. It has to be done correctly.
What do you mean? Describe us. What do you mean, right? And why are you so cautious?
Because I think we're going to have a lot of challenges going forward in a post-COVID-19 world, whether we're in the United States of America or whether we're in Greece. I think that we have to be. I think we have to face this reality, and I think when we're looking at a project like Ellenikon, for example, we want to be able to put the best possible group together that has a worldwide platform, that is an international brand that's recognized, Pandu, and that can attract tourists where we know there's going to be a decrease in tourism. And that's, of course, why I support the Hard Rock proposal.
Mm-hmm. What's the plan of Hard Rock in Ellenikon?
The first objective is to win, right? And ultimately, unfortunately, the courts are going to decide that. However, once Hard Rock is successful, and successful means whether it's now in the Greek courts or ultimately in the European courts, Hard Rock intends on building and developing a integrated resort casino that will be the envy of the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dan, have you heard that Ellenikon? That goes back dozens of years now. I remember I had an interview with President Trump in late 90s talking about Ellenikon, wanted to invest back then. And he had a good civil engineer, Mr. Kondilis, who passed away a few years ago. They had a plan together for Ellenikon, but they never had the chance.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that Trump plan, but I am aware that, look, it's 2020 here. And we're talking about a site that's been available essentially since 2004, since the Olympics. I was there. I covered the Olympics for the American media at Ellenikon, where many of the venues were, of course, and did a story actually at that time for the American media about the various plans that were starting to develop. And, normally if you host an Olympic Games, you have a plan in place before the Games take place. From the time that you're awarded the Games, you're forming a plan for the afterlife of these sites. So now we're still talking about a site where we watched baseball games, where we watched LeBron James play basketball against the Greek team that was coached by Giannakis, where there were other beautiful venues, and where many of us, such as in my experience, that is the place where I first set foot on Greek soil in my first trip with my family as a 6-year-old. This is a very important site. It's a very amazing location. And yet 16 years later, I agree with Michael. You have to do what is best and you have to be careful. But when you have a group that is frustrated and feels that the process wasn't fair. Again, that speaks to the larger issue of investment in Greece by the diaspora and by others from other countries.
Mm-hmm. Mike, back to you. Let's see how Hard Rock and other American companies who had plans before COVID and before this crisis to invest abroad think now. Do you think they will have second thoughts?
Again, there's a plan in a post-COVID-19 world. And I don't know that anybody knows exactly what that plan is because it's developing. I could tell you that Hard Rock has doubled down their efforts and fully intends on having success in the courts. But as it relates to other investment, to other companies, there's obviously an incredible amount of interest right now in the ports in northern Greece. And obviously the embassy is very much involved in attracting American investment. So that to me is very exciting. And by the way, people, companies and Greek Americans are interested in these things despite the fact that there's systemic corruption. We all know it, but we're all hopeful that we can get over this hump and actually do what's right for Greece.
Yeah, you're right. I have always this discussion and how the Greek Americans favor and they want to come to Greece despite crisis, despite all the difficulties. But on the other hand, want to invest. The Greek Americans want to invest in Greece, but at the same time, they want this investment to be profitable. They want to make a profit out of it. They don't want to make a.
Of course, you look, Fanny, it's simple. We love Greece. We love Greece. I could speak on behalf of Dan. We love Greece, but we could invest anywhere in the world. The reason why we want to invest in Greece is because we love Greece. But when you make an investment, you obviously expect a return on your investment. And what you don't expect is to deal with the corruption that unfortunately is at every level. And that's something that we have to face. And I think we have to face it soon. So that way we realize the return.
Talking about corruption, we had like a few interviews during the last years with John Katsimatidis, who tried a lot of times to come to Greece. To invest, but they had a chance. Talking about opportunities, Dan, in Greece, what do you have in mind talking about business opportunities? Do you have in mind something like high technology companies? Like what do you have in mind?
Yeah, I think for a lot of Greek Americans is more basic. I think a lot of them are trying to decide, are they going to keep properties there? If so, are they going to invest in more residential properties for rentals? Are they going to keep other commercial properties that they have? And I can tell you that a lot of times you run into a lot of, beyond corruption, I'll be the last to lecture anyone about corruption because Chicago is a notoriously corrupt city in the United States. And you can get businesses done here nevertheless. So I think the bigger problem in Greece, maybe even more than corruption, is the idea that you have to go through a lot of red tape, even with very small investments, much less the larger things like starting up a tech company in Greece. I mean, when you're talking about maybe a small storefront like the one that my family has near the Acropolis, near Makriani in central Athens, and you run into months of red tape and many court appearances in order to reopen it and do many things that we've had to do over the years. And also to find renters who in an economy like Greece will continue to pay rent regularly. These are more basic things. You're looking at a country, here we have now 15% unemployment because of the pandemic. And, Greece was 25, 30% for years on end. And clearly that affects the ability of people to pay rent in commercial properties that you own. And it affects the value of your residential properties, even in markets within Greece that are international markets in terms of buyers.
Mhm. Mike, back to you. Besides Elleniko, what other opportunities you're thinking about Greece?
Well, I love the fact that Dan talked about the small business, right? Because just like the United States, our economy here was built on small business. Greece is absolutely in the same circumstance, right? It's the periptero owner, like my Theo Laiki, the small business owner that actually is the lifeblood of a republic. So we, of course, always like talking about the big things like Ellenikon and like the ports. But I really believe that one of the successes of this government will be, and I'm talking about the Mitsotakis government, is the ability to be able to allow the small business owner with the fruit stand or the periptero, the ability to be able to be proud of their business again. And the faster we get these things up and running, the faster that we get the kafenia filled again, the faster Greece will recover. And that's really what is necessary. Obviously, we're going to always talk about issues like Ellenikon. We're going to talk about the ports because they're sexy projects. But we have to understand that our democracy is built on the small business owner.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that regions like Western Greece region, which organizes this conference,
yeah, of course,
the growth conference, and other regions in Greece can be a tool to attract foreign investments? It might be easier. And what do you want to see of their part?
Dan, you want to hit that one?
Yeah, I mean, as far as specific regions, I think that there's a lot more opportunity. I can't speak specifically to Western Greece. I don't have many ties specifically there, but my parents are both from Peloponneso. They're involved in, Topika, Somatia, clubs of people here in the United States who are really getting much older in their membership. And now leaving the age of maybe being investors, many of their members who are immigrants in the 60s, 70s or earlier. But you're talking about people that have had very tenuous, very limited ties with local government in Greece. We have had some visits, perhaps from mayors of different regions within Peloponneso or other parts of Greece. And I think a lot of those times they go to an apokriatiko dance or to some event and take some pictures and, they leave it there. And unfortunately, those ties are not cultivated to the point where they're stronger and where you have people saying, look, if you want to invest in our region in Greece, we can cut through the red tape for you. We can take care of things for you and make it easier for you and eliminate the fears that you have about investing in your patria.
Mm-hmm. Mike, what do you think? Do you think if, let's say, the region, specifically this region, the Western region, Mr. Karmakis, let's say he's taking the opportunity, he lays out business opportunities in a conference, do you think would be a good deal?
Yeah, I actually had an opportunity when I was there last in February to go to my father's Korio in Lazoi, exo aptin Pirgo. And on the drive down, which was really a beautiful drive, I just saw opportunity. That's what I saw. I saw so much underdevelopment that all I could think about as a businessman was the business possibilities, was the development possibilities. So I think that the governor obviously is doing a great job. I think the organizers of this conference are doing a great job of promoting that part of Greece. Again, it's very personal to me because that's where my father is from. But I think there's possibility and potential, and we have to keep pushing.
Yeah, might be easier in a way because we're going to have an direct, let's say, opportunity to talk about small, big business opportunities. And the prefectures, the regions might be a good format for this. Now, let's talk now about what do you want to see from, let's say, the Greek government fighting? Let's say you talked about corruption. What other improvements? What are the changes you want to see in part of the government in order to have a more business friendly environment? Mike?
I think the key to better government is transparency. We say in English, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And you talk about that now with the coronavirus. I'm not sure that's the case with the coronavirus, but what I'm sure about, I'm not a scientist or epidemiologist, but what I'm sure about as an investigative journalist is that when you want to eliminate the kind of corruption that inhibits investment, that inhibits economic development, the best thing to do is to have a vibrant, not only media such as yourself, but give them the tools for the public and the press to be able to find out what's being done with their tax money and in their name. And I think in Greece, you have to have a more vibrant effort to require the release of public documents, for instance, so that people know that what they're doing in the name of the people and with the people's money can later be found out. And many times the fear of being exposed like that creates greater accountability. We have vibrant investigative journalism in Illinois. We still have a lot of corruption, but I shudder to think how much more corruption we would have if we did not have, for instance, a Freedom of Information Act and lawyers that are able to prosecute to require transparency in government. It's a buzzword that a lot of people use, but the devil is really in the details when it comes to having true transparency that can inhibit the spread of corruption.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're clear. Now let's close up this chat with a short statement. Mike, in a minute, please give me a last statement talking about diaspora and investments in Greece.
I think it's really important again to say how much agapume ti patrida mas, right? We absolutely love Greece. We actually, even more than love, we pain for Greece. My papu's dream was to come to America, make a good life for himself, and then go back to Greece and die. Of course, he never did that. He ended up dying here, but this was his passion. This is what he loved, and he instilled that in us. And that's what all of our parents do, right? All of our parents. And by the way, I know, again, speaking for Dan, that's what we do with our own children. We make them passionate about Greece. And that's why they want to come this summer, despite coronavirus. And I think it's that passion that drives investment. It's not the other way around. We're the best spokespeople for Greece. We have a great Greek ambassador to the United States now, but the best ambassadors for Greece are always the Greek Americans, the Australian Greeks. We're the ones that promote Greece the way we have.
Okay, Dan?
Yes, I agree entirely with Michael. It starts at home, like so many things that you try to build up in a culture. It really starts with your own individual responsibility to maintain your roots, to pass on pride in your roots to your children. Look, I'm a journalist, right? So I'm not going to be able to make the kind of investments individually that a Katsimatidis or a Kalamos is going to make. But I am dedicated, despite the obstacles that we've discussed during this chat, to maintaining my connections to Greece, including some investments, some personal properties, and in my family. And we're committed to it. And part of this looking forward is to teach Greek to our children. We have to improve Greek education in the United States, but we're taking advantage of whatever opportunities we can have here to teach my daughter Greek. And But at the end, like Michael said, it's a feeling, it's a pang that you feel in your heart that you have to transmit to the next generation. And my proudest moment as a parent, well, there's much to be proud of with my children, my daughter and the Carlutzos children as well. But what you have was one moment when my daughter was asked to write her autobiography, and she said, I was born in 2010 in Chicago as a Greek. So she was born Xenitemeni. And when you have that, you find ways to overcome the obstacles that we discussed.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike, Dan. And you see the technology. Mike is in Virginia, you in Chicago, I'm in Athens. This is organized in Patra by the region and Peloponnesos newspaper. You see how what high technology is making it, and how
it's a beautiful thing.
Overpass the COVID situation. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was nice seeing you, Mike, Dan. Thank you for this, and I'm looking forward to meet you both again soon in Greece or in the United States. And I want to thank the organizers for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up this room, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Fanny.
Thanks to me.